Jason Chow and Treads Red in the lower bracket, but let's kick everything off first. So our first player coming out now from Romania, it's going to be Rdu. And representing the Americas, and most importantly, especially for TJ Fresno, it's going to be Ant.
Versus Rdu.
He's a really good player, and it's kind of weird that he feels like somebody like I've known for a long time, but this is the first time I've ever met him.
Ant has been in the scene for quite some time. I don't see him like playing to win. He's not like super cutthroat about it. Like a lot of people that I met would do anything to win, but Ant just likes to have fun, and he's a great person.
He's a real cool guy, but in terms of like Hearthstone, he's probably the person I want to face the least, I think, in my group.
The decks that he brought for this tournament, I think, are a good strategy, good against most of the people, but I think I'm slightly favored if I would face him.
Ant versus Rdu. Let's rock!
3 quarterfinalists have been decided already, with one more spot remaining in the winner's portion of the upper bracket. Who will triumph between Rdu from Romania and Ant from the USA? Welcome back, everybody, to the Spring Championship. It is time to begin the last match of day number 1, and what a day it's been. Beginning with Knights of the Frozen Throne announcement, which got us hyped all the way through to the previous match, which lived up to the hype. Kolento versus Mage, and I hope that Ant versus Rdu can follow in that footsteps, because that was quite the best of 5 that we witnessed.
Yeah, we've had some incredible matches so far, and a lot of upsets, really. Many of the underdogs have come out on top in their groups, and if that continues going, I think we may see Ant winning here, but who knows?
Ant's victory here would also mean that none of the European representatives would have gotten to the top 4. We have 2 players from Asia Pacific, 2 ANZ players, Australia and New Zealand representing strong, and 1 USA representative, Coronet. Who's going to join them? Let's take a look at the bans. You see Rdu's Burn, Freeze Mage, Control, Gunther, Hybrid, whatever you want to call it, Mage, has been banned. Ant, of course, his Shaman has been banned. It's been one of the MVP decks of the tournament.
Yeah, and we heard these players talking about one another just a moment ago. Both of them really go back to the beginnings of competitive Hearthstone. Rdu actually was one of the most notable players back in 2014. He actually was not eligible to compete in the World Championship qualifiers back then because his country, Romania, was not permitted to compete in that. That has obviously since changed as he's here. Ant was just a couple of matches away from qualifying for the 2014 World Championship himself with a top 16 appearance at the Americas Championship that year.
Yeah, Admirable talks about it all the time. Admirable, who's casting with us and TJ's partner, played on the 2014 Americas Championship, I believe against Ant, and was talking about how Ant dominated him back then. And 3 years later, Ant's back on the stage. Couldn't be happier for the guy, but he has a long road ahead of him. He has to go through Rdu, who's been absolutely killing it this year. He had a quiet 2016 and 2017, quiet 2016, but going to 2017, he was more motivated than ever, primarily because last year he was the last call invitational points leader and was not rewarded for it. And when he saw Pavel took it, he's like, that's got to be me next year.
Yeah, he actually, I believe, lost in the finals of the last call event to Pavel, and then Pavel went on to win the World Championship. So there's got to be some what-if going on in Rdu's mind, and he's trying to put those questions to bed here. And he's off to a pretty solid start with the turn 1 Corsair into patches, plus the Jade Claws, getting him some board presence here against Ant's Secret Mage deck.
Right, Secret Mage primarily thrives off of tempo. It's pretty much the modern reincarnation of Tempo Mage, where you're able to capitalize off of a lot of cheap spells, sometimes even free, depending on the Kirin Tor Mage. And you're trying to establish big swings onto the board with Cabal Crystal Runner, and then even leveraging some late game cards if you have them in your deck. Some people choose to put Medivh, for example, to slow it down. In this case, Ant has chosen Yogg-Saron.
Yeah, and I think that this Mage deck from Ant may be, at least in this matchup, the weak point of his lineup. he's playing against a lineup that is very similar to his. Both players have the aggressive Druid deck. They have Pirate Warrior. They have the Evolved Shaman. The big difference is the freeze/burn mage that RDU brought, which Ant respected so much that he banned it, and then the secret mage deck from Ant.
Yeah, and we'll start to see if that ends up being the difference maker here. Of course, what does surprise me is Ant. I kind of expected Shaman to be banned, but I also can see why the Mage is, because Freeze Mage has traditionally been very powerful against aggressive strategies, although it's not really a Freeze Mage, because they threw in a couple Mana Worms and a Medivh the Guardian, so it does have that hybrid feel of it. Ant respects that a lot from RDU, because that was the deck he was primarily practicing. And that's probably what RDU wants to see, because Shaman's very good against the lineup. Good against the aggro Druid, good against Pirate Warrior, and at least even against the Secret Mage.
Which, from Ant's perspective here, if he does end up losing this this matchup, it's against one of RDU's strongest decks in his lineup for this particular matchup.
It'd be huge. It'd be huge. Now, Ant doesn't have a secret to pair with the Q and Tor Mage, but we kind of mentioned that this is the modern incarnation of Tempo Mage, and as we know, the Tempo belongs to how much you can establish onto the board. So plays like this, even if they look ugly, I think you got to go for it. As much as you want to also play cards like Arcane Intellect, if you lose the board against the Token Shaman or the Evolved Shaman, you'll never win it back from this point forward.
Yeah, Ant's deck doesn't really have much in the way of area effect cards. He doesn't have Flame Strike. He doesn't have Volcanic Potion. So he's really relying on that Cone of Cold in his hand that he got off a Primordial Glyph to try to potentially claw back in if he does fall behind. And he is certainly behind now, as the Flame Tongue Totem allows RDU to clear off the Kirin Tor Mage and develop another totem of his own.
That's right, and with Bloodlust, you can tell that RDU is trying to set up a way to not only handle future threats, but also potentially end the game, as he has 5 damage set up with the minions, 2 from the weapon, that's 7, plus 12 is 19. So he'd be a little bit off, but at the same time, you don't expect that to always necessarily go through. Ant's deck has a couple of tricks up its sleeves. Everyone knows about the threat of Mirror Entity, Counter Spell, but he also has a Spellbender, which is a little bit nifty if things like Jade Lightning or other cards come into the mix.
Although if Jade Lightning just point at your face, which was looking like what happened this game, not quite as hot. He does find a Blizzard off of this Primordial Glyph here, but he does need something that can potentially help him slow things down here. I think, yeah, he's going to go ahead and take the Blizzard. As we mentioned, this is a matchup where the area effect cards that are not in his actual deck can be very crucial.
Yeah, and this could be a big swing in the matchup. The fact that Ant has now been able to piece together a defensive plan with Cone of Cold and Blizzard. Cone of Cold this turn allows him to Sorcerer's Apprentice and Blizzard, or even just Blizzard straight up if he doesn't want to commit to Sorcerer's Apprentice against the Jade Claws. It does give him an opportunity to fight back over the course of turns. And this is a little bit counterintuitive to what you want to do, and a mark of a player that's very experienced with the deck. When you're able to pivot from the aggressive strategies that you're normally accustomed to and decide to play a little bit slower and reactive.
Yeah, being able to adapt to unusual situations is very important at high-level play, because things don't always go as to plan. You don't always have your Mana Worm into Arcanologist, into Secret, into Valet, off to the races.
Right.
And you need to be able to play from situations where your deck is not at its strongest.
Right, and now what does RDU do to respond to that Cone of Cold? Normally people think like, well, I want to set up for the Bloodlust, try to go wide, but he's choosing to take it very slow.
And the fact that he did not get Healing Totem here, he actually had a 50-50 between Healing Totem and Searing Totem, means that Blizzard, in fact, will clear his entire board next turn, because there's still damage on that Flame Tongue Totem.
Yeah, Flame Tongue surviving would have been very nice for the Aya to set up additional threats, force at least a hero power in the following turn. But Ant's been also playing it very slow. I think RDU is kind of interpreting Ant to have a very clunky hand. He played Kirin Tor Mage without any secret. He's also kind of played Primordial Glyph into a Cone of Cold, which has also been a little off curve. So RDU puts the read that Ant has a little bit of a heavier hand, but how does he bounce back from here after this Aya? Picks up Primal Fin Totem, so that's another way to flood the board. And that's kind of what the Shaman deck is really good at. It's so good at bouncing back, even if you use one card to clear their entire minion board.
Yeah, the Shaman deck is full of cards that make multiple minions. And we see the Aya get another one of those. And Ant, he chose to hold back his Sorcerer's Apprentice last turn and is super paid off for it, because now he gets to actually play 3 separate spells this turn. The Arcane Intellect into Frostbolt, which he would have just lost his Sorcerer's Apprentice to the Jade Claws last turn.
Right.
So that's the reason he held it back, and it worked out great for him.
Although you have to feel pretty good from your RDU shoes. Your opponent just used double Frostbolt on Aya, and you still have a minion left over. So, maybe RDU coming into the normal Firelands Portal turn, can start extending a little bit onto the board to try to make Firelands Portal awkward.
And one thing that's so powerful about Rdu's deck against this style of deck is that he can go very wide. He's not fearing any copies of Flamestrike or Volcanic Potion, as we mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Just Doppelgangster here. A single big minion would line up very poorly against Firelands Portal, but Doppelgangster plus the Primal Fist Totem gives him a bunch of spread out threats, and that makes the traditional power turn from the mage of Firelands Portal really not do very much at all.
That's right, and both glyphs have been used. In terms, and their cards have been revealed. It's been Cold and Blizzard, so he knows that there's not a possibility of a random spell from Mage being able to sweep the board here. So Rdu extends onto the board, and now there's a lot of targets that you kind of want to kill off here. All the Doppelgangster targets are vulnerable or are likely to evolve, and of course the Primal Fin keeps generating value.
And frankly, if Ant does not get a taunt off of a Firelands Portal here, he's just dead to Bloodlust. There's going to be at least 5 minions to survive if he just Firelands Portals. And frankly, unless he Arcanologists into Counterspell and can Counterspell a Bloodlust, he would die to Bloodlust. But we even see the Maelstrom Portal waiting in Rdu's hand that can break that defense that Ant could put up.
Right. I mean, he also can, let's see. Yeah, no, you're completely right. It has to be Firelands Portal into a Taunt Main or some other defensive card here.
Oh, that is not what he
boy.
wants. I mean, he's dead anyway.
Yeah.
But that Hydra could represent even more damage if set like a Maelstrom Portal. But Rdu takes a pretty quick first game win over Ant here. And yeah, as we mentioned earlier, that mage is going to be very key for Ant. Trying to get that through is really going to be the linchpin of this matchup for him.
That's right. And Rdu, when he was building his lineup, you know, I was there watching him run a bunch of scrimmages with Nyria. They played so many games, hours and hours every day, narrowing down the lineup. Rdu wanted to have the best of both worlds. He wanted to play an aggressive lineup that also was good against other aggro decks, which is why he throws in those weird curveballs like that hybrid Freeze Mage, which is definitely given a lot of other aggressive decks problems. He played against Treadsred, who was playing a fast lineup, and he was able to sweep him. Treadsred played every deck in his lineup. He played Rogue, he played Mage, and it didn't matter what he threw at Rdu, he lost. And Rdu said he felt really good, and he felt like his lineup was very effective, which makes him favored against the rest of the field there. Rdu, of course, is looking pretty good, and we got a chance to sit down and talk with him and get to know Rdu a little bit better beyond just the cards.
Well met.
Hello, my name is Dima Radu, also known as Rdu. I'm 20 years old and I'm from Bucharest, Romania. My favorite thing about playing Hearthstone is definitely winning. I think the most important thing that it takes to be a great Hearthstone player is dedication. There's like so many small things that you need to do correctly. My favorite food is probably sushi. I don't get to eat it that much because there's not that many fish in the ocean. I don't want to eat all of them. I don't know, I keep it for special occasions. I don't eat it every day or something like that.
Well, if Rdu wins the championship, he can buy as much as he wants for a long time. We'll see as you take a look at all of his accolades and accomplishments over the years. Playing on the Hearthstone Global Games team, being able to win DreamHacks over the course of multiple years. In fact, I believe Rdu, in my opinion, was the first breakout star through the open tournament systems. If you look back in 2014, a lot of people were talking about how there's a lot of invitationals. Who was truly the best if you put everybody on equal footing? And Rdu was one of the first people to put his name out there on the map.
Yeah, and he's been a well-known and well-respected member of the competitive community, along with his team, G2. You know, they won the Team League Championship that Team Archon run a few years ago, and you know, he's just a very well-known and well-respected player overall.
Certainly. And as we are also engaging in a crazy close best of 5, we also have a lot of influencers around the building here. We guys saw earlier Eloise was playing. I believe Toast is there. And this is the line for some of the popular streamers that are in the tavern right now. For signatures, there's also a merch line. There's devs in the building doing interviews about Knights of the Frozen Throne, as well as all the current things existing. Because I know a lot of people are asking, like, oh, when's the Quest Rogue nerf going to go live? So there's a lot of cool things happening. But of course, what we're here for, at least me and Kibler are, and the rest of the players, is who's going to win that trophy.
Yeah, and this whole crowd has been, we heard them cheering in the last match as everything went back and forth between Kalento and Mage, and it's just really a very different environment for these players, being up on this stage in front of a huge crowd. Most of them haven't really had this kind of experience before.
All right, let's head into game number 2. RDU is going to turn to the Pirate Warrior up against the Secret Mage. The Pirate Warrior does end up coming out on top, at least statistically, against the Secret Mage. I do wonder if RDU's techs, his specific choices in his deck list, will end up helping him. He does have Captain Greenskin and Leroy Jenkins, giving him a lot of range in the mid stages of the game. Does have like a Naga Corsair, a Spellbreaker, and a Mortar Strike. So he's pretty much got a little bit of everything to address any kind of situation, but also will lack a little bit of consistency in terms of game plan towards turn 4, turn 5.
You said Captain Greenskin and Leroy Jenkins as if like Leroy Jenkins was an unusual choice in Pirate Warrior. So
well, it's just the fact that he's got so much top end.
I'm just saying, it's just kind of funny. They're like, everyone always Leroy's me. I don't know what you're talking about. But in this game, everyone always seems to have Fiery War Axe, and RDU has it to answer the coined-out Arcanologist from Ant here. It's another Arcanologist followed up for Ant, but that War Axe still waiting, and even upgrade to make it stick around even longer. Ooh, but yeah, the upgrade here plus Blood Cell Raider, and this is already a very advantageous position for RDU. Just a little bit of factoid there. Ant, the Warlock expert for the Tempo Storm meta-analysis. That's probably something that's been a rather...
His job's been pretty easy recently.
It's been a rather
we gave him the past
quiet position for the Angoro metagame.
We've given the past 10 weeks off or so.
The guy just relax. Focus on the other classes. He's like, all right, I'll do that. I'll make it to the championship. Now I don't have to pay attention to Warlock.
Yeah, he's got a lot of free time, I suppose. So you grind some HCT points. Ant doesn't really like to see this. No matter what minion he puts out, he's going to be answered by that weapon, and it's also going to get kind of bad with the Naga Corsair follow-up too. I wonder if RDU... Okay, because I was looking at Frothing Berserker originally, but South Sea Captain's also interesting. Naga Corsair is pretty hard to pass up when you have Captain Greenskin to follow up, but then you trade your patches, or you kind of leave up the 1/1 there and make Naga Corsair a little bit more vulnerable. Yeah, I like this a little bit better.
Yeah, you do end up developing a pretty solid minion here that Ant effectively needs to Frostbolt plus Ping to get rid of it. And now Ant is once again in a pretty awkward spot.
Yeah, what I really like about the Frothing Berserker play is, even though it's a little bit off curve, it sets up similar power to the Naga Corsair, assuming that Captain Greenskin upgrades the weapon and the weapon hits something that you're expecting to trade into. And then that gets the Frothing Berserker rolling a little bit early before your opponent can set up optimal removal turns, because the opponent just used a Frostbolt, so maybe he has less removal for it. So I really like this this decision here from RDU, even though it seems like on the surface an easy one.
Yeah, the Corsair can have more of an impact later, whereas because there is the trade that he's going to take, he ends up getting maximum value from the Frothing Berserker right now. It looks like Ant may actually just be going ahead and Frostbolting and shattering it.
He doesn't have to shatter. He can use his hero power next turn.
But if he doesn't shatter now, A, he's not really going to find use for the shatter,
yeah.
And B, he's forced to commit the mana from his hero power next turn. So,
right.
But then Captain Greenskin just means this War Axe can just keep getting upgraded, take out the Sorcerer's Apprentice here, and just keep RDU in the driver's seat.
That's right. I mean, Arcanite Reaper is kind of redundant when he's got a ready one equipped right now.
Barrier War Reaper right here.
Yeah, and RDU kind of recognizes that as much as he had opportunities to swing his weapon to his opponent's health pool, he really needs minion damage to make up that difference. He can't win just through weapon damage alone until he drew that Arcanite Reaper, but even then, he'd still be short damage a little bit.
Well, Ant sets a mirror entity rather than counterspell, recognizing that he needs to stop RDU from just being able to get a significant tempo advantage by playing just minions here. And counterspell doesn't really stop that much in RDU's deck.
Huh, well, I mean, yeah, counterspell stops pretty much Heroic Strike upgrades and that one Mortal Strike.
Dread Corsair does mean that Ant gets a Dread Corsair, which can absorb a bit of damage.
Right, and this South Sea Captain allows him to get that +2 health trade, which makes it a little bit awkward for Ant to use with his hero power. And I love that Rdu recognizes that he just needs that forward. It's very rare to see the Pirate Warrior have so much dominance over the board with weapons and be down in health this much and his opponent's at full health. But once you get that damage rolling, it ends very quickly.
If you just keep connecting, that ends up really fast, especially when it's backed up by an Arcanite Reaper.
Yeah, a lot of people actually mistakenly think Pirate Warrior is only a face deck, when a lot of times when I see the best players play it, they're often trading at some very interesting spots, setting up for a lot of power spike turns. What the weapons allow you to do is not necessarily just go and hit your opponent for 6 or 10 or whatever amount of ungodly damage you get with upgrade, but it allows you to leverage a board so that way you can hit, kind of like a mid-range hunter. You hit with, 17 in one turn because all of a sudden you set up a 6-attack minion, a 3-attack minion, and you hit with the weapon again, and all of a sudden this big burst your opponent can't handle at once.
It is a sort of deck that I think is constantly underestimated, not necessarily in terms of power level, but in terms of the number of intricate decisions that go on in any given game.
Right. Now we're not saying that Pirate Warrior is the most complicated deck out there, but it definitely gets a lot of bad rap, and I think it's a little unjustified sometimes.
Ant has to use Fireball to clear off the Captain Greenskin, and now he's just in still a rough spot. There's 7 more damage coming in from Rdu next turn, and that's to say nothing of the cards remaining in his hand. It's the Leroy Jenkins.
It's the Leroy Jenkins, and Rdu ends up drawing a lot of his top end, which means that his draws from this point forward should be kind of weak, and maybe not necessarily weak, but they'll be lower curve, allowing him to be able to squeeze in more efficient plays. But this is kind of the curse of having too many of your cards being costed at a high mana cost, because now he can't really squeeze in all of these cards at once, which is usually what you want to do as Pirate Warrior. You want to play mana efficiency, and armoring up is good if you're trying to survive a war of attrition and Mage only relies on top deck fireballs. But in this scenario, it's just kind of useless.
It's Ant here, not Mage. Mage was in the last match.
Touche.
It is really confusing. Like Control last week playing the Wild Open. It's like, here's Control Warrior deck. It's like, no, that's Pirate Warrior.
I'm
played by Control.
I'm starting to resent those usernames a little
The
bit.
Druid, Mage. It's like, wait, what's happening here?
Yeah.
But none of that in this match. We got Rdu and Ant. Easy to remember. Doesn't conflict with any actual class names at all.
Yeah, so Rdu sets up the Naga Corsair. This is kind of like an Arcanite Reaper if it's able to hit the face one time. It ends up getting that weapon swinging anyways. And you want to set up repetitive damage, even though you don't get the plus attack on your weapon. Rdu recognizes that it's coming up on Faraline's portal turn, and you'd rather make it complicated for his opponents. Interesting, the Grind Street Enforcer, which I'm not sure if that'll play a big factor, but who knows? Yaxron now is more resilient to his own spells.
It's true. And a little bit of a bigger mana worm. Survives a War Axe hit now. One interesting thing about this is it actually broadcasts information to Rdu.
Yeah.
The fact that he knows, okay, there's 2 minions in your hand.
Right.
That means you don't actually have that much removal. You can't possibly have that much burn. And Rdu is going to go ahead and just send everything to the face. That's Leroy Jenkins' range alone, not to pay any attention to the minions and the weapon that are still up.
Yeah, and this is why the Secret Mage struggles, because without the ice block, you can't really guarantee yourself a defensive play. And even then, ice block's not even that good, because the Pirate Warrior is still usually threatening you with a big board. You don't really have access to these flame strikes. You don't have any other stall mechanics. You need Primordial Glyph to really bail you out, or you need to win tempo very early in the game.
I'm late.
And here, Ant is basically just kind of bluffing, I guess. There's just lethal damage represented on the other side of the board. But he's going to make Rdu go through the motions.
It's, I do consider this move a little bit disrespectful sometimes, because it's like, well, maybe Rdu's bad enough to miss lethal here. But, you never know. Give your opponent a chance to mess up.
He got him.
He plays to win, I guess. Maybe Rdu was wrong in his interview.
All right, well, turns out Rdu found lethal there by just attacking the face, and he's up 2-0, and Ant's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, we have the Druid remaining here for Rdu, and Druid versus Secret Mage is, actually a little bit awkward for the Druid at times if Mage gets off to a fast start. But the big problem is, Ant still has his own Pirate Warrior, so Aggro Druid feasts on that. It's one of its best matchups, and a big reason why it got popular in the meta was because it was good against Pirate Warrior, and it also pressured the Quest Rogue, which dominated early on in Ngoro.
Yeah, Galactic Crawler turns out pretty good against Pirate Warrior.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm actually taking a look at the deck list. I don't know if I see a Galactic Crawler. I think he actually put a Hungry Crab instead of...
Are not. Interesting.
Actually, that's Ant's list.
Yeah, this is Ant's list, yeah.
Apologies. There are 2 Galactic Crawlers in Rdu's list, which
that's going to be a tough one.
kind of reaffirms what we were talking about, which is Rdu wanted to play an aggressive deck that was also good against other aggro decks.
Yeah, and this still for Ant, this mage is just really struggling, and it's positioned very well against mid-range and control style decks. We saw it have a lot of success against, say, Quest Rogue, which is one of the decks, perhaps the specific deck that Ant's lineup is targeted to beat the most. But Rdu also recognizing that Quest Rogue is going to be a big factor in the metagame, playing a similarly aggressive lineup, but with a deck that is much more powerful in other aggro matchups in that burn mage.
It's always kind of catered to Rdu's strengths. I think Rdu's deck that's been iconic to him is the Zoo Warlock. And that was largely an aggressive deck, but very board control oriented. And it seems like Rdu is kind of going back to that, where he's able to play very fast, very tempo oriented, but he's maintaining board control throughout the entire time. He's teched his deck and outfitted accordingly.
Yeah, he has maintained control the entire time in this entire tournament so far. He actually has yet to lose a game. He won his first match 3-0, and now he is up 2-0 against Ant with a pretty strong opening here as well.
It's 5-0 so far, and with Power of the Wild and Mark of Los pickup, it's going to be hard for Ant to climb back immediately. Usually it's dependent on the Arcanologist and the Mana Worm. Those are the two highest win rate cards in Secret Mage by a big margin. Look at that pickup, vicious fledgling right after Ant has used that Frostbolt, so Ant has to Fireball to remove it unless he draws something else better.
The vicious purple flappy bird here, and Ant finds a Medivh's Valet. Not what he's looking for here, and it always feels incredibly bad to coin out a Fireball on your opponent's Vicious Fledgling, but you got to do it. It'll just kill you.
Yeah, that card is very threatening, and particularly in Druid because of Innervate.
Bloodsuck, of course, are the best draw in Rdu's deck right here. He can go ahead and double buff a board of 4 minions. This is just an absolute mauling right here.
Yeah, forget what you read about the data and all the percentages here. Average Druid rarely loses from this kind of spot. To get double buff on a Bloodsail Corsair play, and Ant is reeling. He does not have any ability to answer right now, and Rdu might be able to pick up lethal as soon as next turn if he gets a little bit of damage.
Wow, Ant
3-0!
Throws in the towel. 3-0 for Rdu. Continues his undefeated game win streak throughout this tournament.
Dominant performance by Rdu from Romania. He sweeps his group clean 6-0 streak, as he is the final quarterfinalist to advance to day 3 directly. And you got to feel good for the guy. He's been putting in a lot of work. He kind of mentioned the key to success is dedication, and I am hard pressed to find another player more dedicated than Rdu. He was the point leader for Europe last year and one of the top point earners, playing in so many tournaments week to week, and you can definitely feel good for him, as he is one of the only favorites, I believe, in this tournament to advance in first place.
And he is the single player who put the most emphasis on winning the tournament. Lots of other players said, I want to make top 4, I want to make the World Championship. Rdu said, I want to win. And 6-0 so far. He is in a great position for that.
Your final winner of the day is Rdu from Romania. He is waiting with Ollie for a couple words on his victory.
All right, let's hear it for Rdu. 掌声踩踩，非常精彩的比赛，而且他在前面的所有比赛当中一场都没有输啊！据说他的卡组呢，也是本期比赛所有选手公认的最吓人、最厉害的卡组。我们来问一下他是怎么想到的。All right, so amazing, great game, didn't lose even one game, and a lot of players think that you had the best lineup for this tournament. So, and they want to know the secret. How did you come up with it?
Just expected a very aggressive meta game because I expected people to be afraid of control and then being either mid-range or aggro to beat the mid-range. So I was like, okay, I'll just lose the control lineups and beat all the other aggro and mid-range lineups. And in my group, I got very favorable matchups all the way, so I expected to get out of the group easy. But now is the hard time. Now is like the top 8 where I need to prove what I can do and qualify to the World Championship.
All right， 好，我来翻译一下，他说的特别快，而且带有点口音，我有点听不太清楚啊。大概翻译一下哈。那他说他自己在设计卡组的时候是观察了大部分其他选手的卡组，并且呢也是尽可能的抛弃了一些这个 mid range 中程和这个控制卡组，然后他也是打得非常的激进，大家已经看出他的牌特别有针对性啊，而且他一场比赛都没有输。Okay, so now are you like really confident that you're gonna win the be the champion because you didn't lose even one game? It's amazing.
It really depends who I face. Like, I can face a very control lineup like Kuonet, and I would be in a really bad spot. But it's a best of 5. I will try to play my best. And if I get a really good matchup, that only helps. If I get a bad matchup, I will still do my homework and try to improve my percentages and do all I can to win.
好，他说啊，他还是非常有信心获得冠军的，但是主要取决于他到底会遇到什么样的卡组。他如果碰到控制类的卡组的话，应该是需要稍微努力一下。但是其他的卡组，他只要研究好自己的对手，还是有非常大的可能性赢的啊，非常有自信啊，用头脑哈，炉石是个竞技游戏。好，让我们再次感谢 RDU，Thank you very much，Thank you，right，Thank you。
RDU is the final quarterfinalist to advance to the top 8. Do want to point out that that was Europe's first player through to the top 8 in a field where people are saying this is probably the best and brightest that we can field. I mean, you really can't be mad about Kalento, Neiria, and RDU and Hoy. And RDU is the only one to survive despite having multiple Europeans at the doorstep today.
Well, we got more matches left than other players. They haven't fallen short of surviving, but yeah. Only one of them advancing through groups, I think, given the pedigree of the lineup, has to be something of a disappointment.
Yeah, I do want to point out, too, that RDU can't play Cornet. He was mentioning that he'd be really afraid. Every first seed will play a second seed. So control lineups like Cornet and Mage, RDU will stay clear from, but we've got a lot more Hearthstone to play, and a lot of Hearthstone to talk about today. So let's go ahead and head up to TJ Natterbull to close out day number 1.